Welcome, everybody, for Simulation Talk 346, special episode for Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving? I hope everything was great. Let me add the website on the screen. Thank you so much, Guru, for notifying everyone. I appreciate you. How was your Thanksgiving, brother? Ooh, that's way too big. So we'll keep it just for a little bit. And then there we go. And then you can add us on Twitch, LaserX83. Welcome to everybody on TikTok as well. And I'll start the stage on our Discord. Beautiful. Thank you, Yoni. Thank you, Guru. Much appreciated. There we go. Stage is open. Jace Balshe. Looks like a fun share. The red door is the answer. That's cool. This channel looks like it's something about wild. I'm going to watch this video later. It looks like a lot of fun. Thank you for sharing this. What up, Nomicat? Guru, how you doing, brother? Welcome, Sammy himself, Digital Keith, Ellipsian. Good to see you, everybody. Crone. Kami Bell is in the house. How's my California girl doing? All right. Elena. Good to see you. Welcome to the chat. How are you feeling? And if you want to come on and chat, just make sure you raise your hand and I'll bring you up. No problem. How was everybody's Thanksgiving? Happy Thanksgiving to you too, Lily. Slowly, people are trickling in. Thank you so much for joining the channels. CodeOfReality.com is our website, and Twitch is LaserX83 if you want to join on Twitch. Kevin, how you doing? We'll be, as I say in the last few, Happy Thanksgiving, random YouTube user. We'll be encouraging more human experience-based conversations. What is it like to be you? Is it good? Is it bad? Why do you think that is? And all the other stuff that comes out of being a human being on this planet. What up, Elizabeth? Dawn is in the house. Patrick. Welcome, everyone. Frame of mind. I am so dyslexic, it's not even funny. User EQ. Happy Thanksgiving to you too. Have I thought about going on the water while the influence? I mean, I thought about a lot of things. Not something I would highly recommend. But sounds like can be a lot of fun. Happy Thanksgiving. Fanch Official. How was everybody's Thanksgiving? Did you spend it mostly with the fam? What do we have here? What do we have here? Turtle. How you doing, brother? So good to see you. How are you, Don? Happy Thanksgiving to you too. How'd you spend your time? Flying Ram. Random YouTube user saying, this is my first live stream. I've been watching your videos and I've wondered, do you have an idea of who is behind the code? A win a simulation of a simulation. So the short answer is yes. Also, welcome to the live for the first time. This is the yeah, I would say it's simulations all the way up. And there's basically management companies on top of management companies. And I think that we're supposed to become one. But first, before we do, we have to kind of prove that we are ethically sound, which currently doesn't seem to be very promising. But what's up, Deborah? Mine was wonderful, Elizabeth. Were you with the fam? Hello from Jacksonville, Florida. Welcome, welcome, fellow Floridians. Okay, what can we get into today? In the spirit of Thanksgiving, what are we thankful for? What are we grateful for? I think there's a lot of things to be grateful for in this world. I'm a phone warrior of all singers and interesting people. Awesome. Also, smiley face. Thank you for the gifts and thank you for the likes. When is the documentary coming out? The beginning of next year. We are now working on distribution and how we're going to do all of that. So it's all coming. It's all coming to fruition. Which, by the way, if anybody still wants to donate to the post production of the film, you're welcome to do so on the GoFundMe page that you can find in the description of the trailer. The trailer you can find on YouTube on my channel, Dango Thoughts, Dango Thoughts. And the trailer, just search for The Discovery, and you can find the GoFundMe page there. The film is going to be bomb. Aaron Venden, the director, is just amazing. Our producer, Chris Paris, who also is an editor on the film with Aaron, they're just doing such incredible work. If, by the way, if you donate over $1,000, which is quite a bit, but if you do, you will automatically be added to a list of people who would see the movie all together for the first time as a world premiere, with Q&A with us and everything. I think that's pretty dope. Nico, how you doing, brother? Happy Thanksgiving. Good to see you. Jules, how are you, brother? Happy Thanksgiving. Y'all promised to leave after Thanksgiving. What are we talking about? Oh, you're talking about people who are ascending or something? Why would we need to be ethically sound, you think? Given what we can do so far with AI, why wouldn't the tech just be needed? Because you don't get permission, from what I understand, you don't get permission to participate in the infinite actuation of further simulations unless you can prove that you're behaving even when you're not being, when you think you're not being observed. Simply because after you get certain level of powers, it's very hard to police you. That would be the number one reason. I guess I've been kind of on the idea that we are pushing towards being able to create a simulation ourselves to help prove this whole thing even further. Yes, but if you're going to be the kind of species that regularly abuses video games characters just for the sake of doing that, maybe you're not the best candidate of running simulations. You know what I mean? Happy Thanksgiving to all the United Statesians. I like it. United Statesians is a fun title. How are you, Sean? Good to see you. I'm a United Statesian. Love it. Let me just do this. I'm just doing this to be able to delete this from the screen. Big Bear, California. Happy Thanksgiving to you, William. Also, I forgot to mention, if you guys want to see people's reports with the laser and you guys want to share yours, it's veilbreak.ai. Do your best turkey sound. Ah. Eh. Don is saying, my understanding is the observation of codes is expanded, but each is a little different. You mean in the experiments? I think people have their own kind of like perceptual bias, let's call it, but I think they're looking essentially at the same thing. If your mind is already decoding patterns from something as simple as a laser line, Imagine how radically different the sensory inputs would be in a different ecosystem like underwater. Maybe yes, maybe no. It might actually make things more murky. When I was younger, I was kind of Sims player who wasn't nice to the Sims. Not gonna lie. There you go. You have your answer. Do I believe in loosh farming? And maybe that could be who's behind the simulation. What is loosh farming? Oh, I see. I mean, you're welcome to believe whatever you want, but if your way of going about things is you believe what sounds good, then you're entitled to do so. But that's not how I go about things. If there's no evidence for something, I don't just take it on board because it sounded like it might make sense. Any advice on one's first trip? Getting ready to do one in the next couple of weeks. I think the basics are really important. Hold on. The basics mean set and setting. So make sure that your mood is in check, your psychology is in check, your environment is in check, the house is clean, you have no tasks, you have nothing to do. That's what I would say is the important part. Beyond that, everything is up for your interaction with it. The basics of hydration, indeed. Oh, Casey's in the house and Sean is in the house. I didn't even see you guys came on. How are you?
Hey,
How are you, brother? Happy Thanksgiving.
happy Thanksgiving. I was thinking about you earlier. I thought, maybe you won't be on tonight, but you are. So it's such a nice surprise.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I'm gonna come on, but I figured I have some energy to give, so why not give it? How was your Thanksgiving?
It's really nice.
Spend with the fam or?
Yeah, I went up with the fam, and I was just thinking about it, like just 2 seconds ago. I was like, oh, one of the guests was a family member of mine, and I realized he mentioned his dad, and then I thought I got it screwed up. I didn't realize it was the son of one of my aunts, whose dad was a particle physicist. I was like, oh no, I wish I would have remembered that at the time. His dad Rob is such a cool guy. But I remember when he was in the height of his research, a really rich guy came and contracted him to go off and put together a report on the geometry of Gothic spires of all things. I'm like, what? And I always wanted to follow up on that, see what that was all about.
That sounds wild.
I know, right? It's so random.
I love your life, bro. Elizabeth is saying Robert Monroe. What are you connecting it to? The something farming theory? Is that what you connected Robert Monroe to, Elizabeth? Is your question taboo for YouTube? Which one? Oh, did you ask something that didn't post? No, it might be some keywords. So just try and ask it in a different way. I have the supplies needed for the experiment. If you can use other methods. Right. All the information is on codeofreality.com. So if you just go to codeofreality.com, yeah, I'll put it here again. You can find the protocol in full. And actually, you can also go to veilbreak.ai. which will give you you can see the original protocol as it was appearing, and you can see the protocols that people do, and you can share yours. So those are the best resources for this. That's to you, random YouTube user. Have you ever done the experiment with multiple lasers on the surface and moved them in unison? Yeah, it makes no difference. It's in the surface. It's not on the surface. So it's not like an interaction between the laser and the surface, it seems. If you can find a way to answer my question, I'd appreciate it. I don't really want to take a heroic dose if it's the other molecule needed. Yeah, you don't need heroic doses. Very little. And again, all the protocols are in the websites that are just provided for you. So you can check it out. Haven't done multiple lasers yet. That's a good one. Lately, I'm spinning out on just the speckle. A lot to learn. Nice. Lose is a term from esoteric and metaphysical communities that refers to a type of energy given off by us that can be harvested by entities. Robert Monroe is tied to him instincts, and that's his theory. Are you sure? I don't know that was what Robert Monroe's theory was. Robert Monroe's center is I've done all the gateway tapes. Definitely an interesting stuff. Are you sure that that's what he thought? Sounds like a conspiracy theory somebody made up, but let's check. Hold on. Did Robert Monroe think that we were harvested for our energy? You are right. It says yes in his second book for Journeys. Robert Monroe wrote about an observation made during an out-of-body experience, OBE, that detailed the concept of human beings harvested for their emotional energy, which is termed loosh. According to Monroe's account, he observed system where certain non-physical entities referred to as collectors harvesting intense emotional energy. So yeah, there's parasites. I don't know why he concluded that that's just the system. That's definitely not what I see. Um, there's a lot of different models you can imagine about the world. I mean, obviously, I would have to read the book to see exactly the details of what he said, but it sounds to me, for a few accounts of seeing this, yeah, there's some beings that would do that for sure. But it is not the system by no means, if you ask me, because that's what I'm saying is a very different picture. But great question, because I didn't know that, so now I know that. I appreciate that. Oh, you asked if we can do mushies with the experiment. You can, and unfortunately, yeah, you're gonna have to do a little bit more to see it. I would say at least 2.5 or 3 grams. So appreciate you, Kurt. Yeah. So just so you know, Elizabeth, the whole released form from the CIA, right? What was classified is not the information. That information was always open source by the Monroe Institute. What was classified was the fact that the CIA was actually using it. So, like I said, I've done the gateway tapes. I read the whole thing. Did you do the gateway tapes? Out of curiosity. You got it, random. And yeah, report it on Veilbreak. That would be great. What about multiple lasers, different colors? Same thing. Colors don't make any difference. We did even variable colors, and Mark Sokol's lab in Jersey. I've heard of that's why there's so much war because evil harvested. And yeah, I mean, all of these theories are very empty to me. I'll be honest with you guys. They're kind of they're akin to fairy tales. It's very easy to make them up. Just because somebody made up a story with a lot of details doesn't mean that's what's going on. I only go by direct experience. This is not my direct experience. So to me, all of these are just a lot of stories people like to believe. Let's see. Do I communicate with the? Oh, well, I think there's a lot of comments here that I missed. Torrid math. Welcome to Saddle Realms. Just watched your interview on Third Eye Drops for the first time last night. Great one. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. But did you know individual master architects of the insectoids? I meet the insectoids quite a bit. Yeah. Do you communicate with them periodically? Every time I go into the space, there is a text that he wrote about Lush. Can't recall the book. He said heightened emotions are irregular and funnel to those in the know. Do you know individual masters architect of the insectoids? Protocol website is veilbreak.ai. Yeah, Mickey. Thank you so much, Nico. Do you know individual masters architects? Oh, I think it's the same person asking on YouTube and TikTok. So the subtle one. Oh yeah, it is. I mean, what do you mean by no? Like personally by name? No, but I do meet the same one sometimes. These ideas of these, master evil controllers. This is all human ideas. It's not the kind of thing that is actually operating in that space. Drasco, how are you, brother? How was your experience with the gateway? And happy Thanksgiving. James saying, hello, Dan. I'd like to know if you believe it is a simulation all the way down, or if there's base reality, and what would if so. Great question. No, there's no base reality. It's not that it's all computational, all of it. Some people insist that it's spiritual, which it is. It's just that it operates by computational rules. The experience of it is spiritual or divine, and then the way it executes is through computational rules all the way through. So yeah, it's kind of simulations all the way down or all the way up, depending on how you look at it. What about the idea that we create the universe as we go? Like we are proactive, not reactive beings. You're co-creating, yeah. You're not creating alone, and you're not creating immediately, which tells you that there's a process happening that also has a say in either how long things last, or the fact that you can't walk through the wall immediately, even if you believe that at some point you can, tells you that there are some rules to the game regardless. So you're co-creating. I would agree with this, which is also why I encourage people to not postulate the most abhorrent scenarios, because you might be creating that simulation. You're going to be in one. I believe that I exist in a very beautiful simulation. So be very careful with what you postulate. Peter Goncia said, did the gateway tapes twice. I believe it's a practice. So it's not so much as how many times you do it, but like you're supposed to do them on a regular basis, basically. How was your experience, though? What up, Jackie? You were also in the GATE program in school. Oh, that's so cool, Elizabeth. That is actually really cool. Has anyone seen the code sober? A couple of people told me they did, yeah. I just want to know the absolute truth, even if it tears my worldview apart. All right. Well, this might deliver. James saying, oh, I read this. Okay, I don't know why it went back. Jason saying, random YouTube user saying, when I had my breakthrough, I didn't see anyone, but was at this huge gate, and in my mind, I heard, you are not ready. I've been rather upset about that since. Why were you upset? That they told you were not ready? And upset in what way? Like, were you mad about it? Or also, if you guys want to help our Twitch channel grow, go to Twitch now and follow us from Laser X83. Laser X83. And our website, just reminding everybody, is codeofreality.com. How was the nanobot set formulated by the insectoids? Well, it has its own logic. It doesn't need to be formulated. It's just a fact about what the equation represents. Have I ever pointed the laser in a quartz crystal or a different thing? Good question. I think through some crystals. I didn't really see any difference. Gateway got me mainly remote view, not astral project. Weirdly, is it weird? Took me months though. Had maybe 3 out of body experience, but mainly remote view. I mean, that's still amazing. Like reliably, you could remote view. They don't have an evil side of what we would interpret as evil. Everything does. You do. It's in every point in space. There's the good. There's the what you would call evil. The yin and the yang. But also, they're actually pretty indifferent. And maybe that you can call evil if you consider that. But they're not. They don't have the same kind of sentiments that we do. I feel like the space is not malicious. Scott's we saying it's advanced technology. Correct. I would agree with this. In my opinion, my whiteout, I thought I had crossed the line and died, then came the comfort. Exactly. This is a very common experience, actually. There's probably base reality that we can't see because of it being filtered by the human experience. Well, that's an arbitrary assumption. Because why would you have one base reality? Most likely, there's the scenario is that the rules encompass the entire everything. So the laser thing sounds so wild, like peeking through the window blinds. Basically, that's how it feels. Frame of Mind saying, has anyone seen the code on mushrooms? Yes. You guys should check out veilbreak.ai. Veilbreak.ai. I'll share it here again. Have I had a psychedelic experience in dreams? I did. Yeah, it happened to us this week. Did you have any psychedelic experience before for that to happen? I had a 5-meo reactivation. What up, Stephanie? In the dream. Like I smoked in the dream after I already smoked a few days before and it reactivated. It was crazy. The specs for the laser, Isaac, you can find on codeofreality.com. Codeofreality.com. I ran it through AI and AI told me it was because of my unwillingness to fully submit. The what happened? Remind me what was the thing that happened that you asked AI about?
I think he's talking about the gate, and he was told that he's not ready.
Oh. And you think that ChatGPT knows the answer to this because what do you guys think ChatGPT is doing? This is amazing. Well, I guess in this particular case, it's not that crazy because ChatGPT kind of knows what some regularities in psychedelic space, probably, which probably is quite true. But really, what do you guys think ChatGPT is doing? What do you want to say?
ChatGPT is a useful tool for helping guide you through working through your own thoughts, coming to your own conclusions.
Mhm.
not a useful tool.
Exactly.
It's not going to provide you any conclusions of
Yeah, don't seek.
what was that?
I don't know, but don't seek wisdom from ChatGPT, guys. I encourage you to not do that. Don't get used to doing that. You'll get very deluded very quickly.
Yeah, it's a very thin line between being a tool and being a danger to society.
Mm-hmm. And really, the danger is us because we're so prone to delusion. I actually like what you wrote there. I'd urge there's a difference between submitting and surrendering. Correct. Big difference, I would say.
Yeah, just the words he was using. I just wanted to point out that to me, there's a big difference between submitting to anything that happens in the experience and surrendering to it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Surrendering to the moment.
Yeah.
Submitting means you it's almost like you bow to something versus just surrendering is just kind of like letting go of the need to control it, which is the neutrality. And also random YouTube users say on Mushis, I've seen myself in a casket being lowered down, stuck in the loop. That's actually a very common loop. The death loop, where people see themselves die over and over again in different ways. He's saying AI wasn't wrong though. I still harbor childhood trauma that is trying to get me. Yeah, like I said, like that's a pretty common. Really, you can pretty much dial in 99% of issues in the psychedelic space to people not being able to let go. That's basically the main reason. Terry, how are you, brother? Trying to read through the comments as quickly as possible. How'd you spend your Thanksgiving, brother, Sean?
Well, my Thanksgiving was earlier because I'm in Canada. But this Thanksgiving, I didn't really do anything special. But I mean, I was still with family. So it just wasn't celebrating Thanksgiving. But yeah, it's listen, I'm very thankful these days. I've got a lot of good people around me. I'm happy that I'm out of a dark period in my life. Plans are moving forward to help me get to where I want to go. So listen, you can always find reasons to complain, but I'm choosing to concentrate on all the things that are going well, and there are many. So I am very grateful.
Well, I'm very grateful for you being here with us here today, and thank you for sharing this. Also, Stephanie saying there's a study of race car drivers where they track their eye movement, where they look. Where they look is where the car goes. Looking at the wall, they crash into. It seems like an apt metaphor for manifestation and how our viewpoint impacts our experience. That's actually the exact example that I tend to use. So right on, full agreement with this. Be very careful what you're focused on. I've said this before many times on the live, but I'm telling you, like, especially it's kind of crazy that all the people that love these kind of stories about the prison planet, all that stuff, is the same people who think they create their own realities. So if you think you create your own reality, why are you giving this the time of day? Think about it. Like, it's so crazy. And I get it. Like, it's juicy. It's like, it's the same reason we like horror films and things like this. But you can't do that and at the same time believe you create your own reality. That's kind of silly, isn't it? It's like, people are like, did you know that? Like, no, and I don't care. This is lovely. That's all I need to know. Look at the birds outside. They sing.
The analogy I use is because I used to ski quite a bit, and it's when you're going in the forests. It's very simple. If you're looking at the tree at the speed that you're going to hit the tree. So you have to look at the path, right? And it's the same thing with these stories. It's like, okay, so if you're believing you're manifesting your reality, are you going to be concentrating on all the things that are blocking you from doing that? All the evil sources of influence or of loose stealing energy or whatever it may be? Or are you going to concentrate on the beauty of life and the things that you can create?
Exactly. And by the way, even if it was the case, which I don't believe it is, I have a completely different image. If it's a thing that is, so here's the thing. just because it makes sense doesn't mean that's what's going on. Do you know how many stories that people come up with that make sense? It's like I can come up with a story right now that would make as much sense, if not more sense, and it would have zero truth to it. So it's like that's not how you should go about life. And the thing is, if you would be living in a world, like just imagine what the belief is, in which everything by some super powerful overlords, everything in their power was done so you never find out, and yet you're some kind of a prisoner in a system. What is the value? And there's no escape. What is the value of you living with this? Like, wouldn't it be better if you just focus on the immediate experience? Like the general case of infinity is not as important of like what you're doing right now, how it feels to be in your body, how you talk to other people, are you enjoying your life? You can still do all of that. You know, this I'll bring it to like a point that is a little simpler and a little closer to home. I think it's the only time in my life that I've disagreed. Thank you so much, Don. I disagreed with George Carlin, which I loved, right? And also, Don is asking if I experienced time shifts. You mean like, what? Can you define that better? What do you mean? How would you know that the time is shifting? Like, what would that? What does that look like? Like, how do you know that's time shifting and not your mood shifting? Let's say. But before you answer, so let me. So you know, there was this famous bit that George Carlin, because of plenty of acid in his life, you know, the people kind of get woke righteous about you know, kind of going against the man, you know, which again, it's all good. Like we should be, as free citizens, we should be able to do whatever we want. But there's this like over correction and oversimplification of how things kind of work. And there was one bit I remember, he was on Bill Maher a long time ago, way before he passed away, obviously, and he was doing his shtick about freedom. I'll tell you about freedom. 13 types of bagels. That's about as much freedom you get. Now that's hilarious because it's George Carlin, but I sit there and I go, yeah. So, are you saying it's a problem, or that's great? Like, yeah, you have 13 types of bagels. Are you saying that it's better to worry about what some elites in a tier of execution of reality you will never have anything to do with? You want to worry about that? Like, you will never meet them. Like, what they do actually does not influence you, or how good of a life you can live at all. Can you not go and find a job and have a relatively nice life? And like, what is wrong with that? This idea that somehow somebody's putting the wool over your eyes, living with that's a prison. That's the catch 22 right there. The fact that you can have a pretty great life, and you're ruining it by thinking about things that would have nothing to do with how good you should feel about your immediate moment. But there's something super sexy about, like, oh no, I figured it out. Hey, guess what? No, you didn't. If people would, how smart do you think you are? It's like, if you think that the most powerful people on the planet figured out a scheme to hide something from you, you think you're the one who would figure it out? Or you think that the majority of people figured it out? Then I guess either they're not that powerful, or well, the other option is what you think you figured out is not the thing they were trying to hide from you. There's all those only two options. So, you know, even without all that, it's like, just dude, just enjoy your life. Like, dude, don't worry about it. Like, truly, like, you have a pretty amazing life in the Western world. I don't know where you're listening from, but there's places in the world there's just like real problems, and I don't have time to worry about nonsense like this. Hold on, I want the lights behind me. By the way, if anybody wants to challenge that, with pleasure, come on and challenge that. Oh, Don's trying to come on. Hold on.
Yeah, so I don't know if I directly challenge the intent behind what you're saying, because I think it's really important for us to realize, you know, in the spirit of Thanksgiving, but in everyday life as well, to be thankful for the freedoms we do have, right?
Mhm.
And as I mentioned previously, like you're creating, whether or not you believe in manifestation, the power of attraction, whatever, what you concentrate on will become more present in your life. That's just the nature of psychology in and of itself. But at the same time, we need those people. We need those people that see those injustices and can't live with them and fight them, because otherwise we would live in a much less beautiful place. You know, the Western world, the countries that we have here, in large part are because of people who bothered to, you know, rise up against what they saw as injustices. So I think there's a happy balance to be found, and it's not everybody's mission. Not everybody has to rise up. A lot of us have different ventures that we need to apply ourselves to, and we have different capabilities and different intents and different goals. And I think it's important to have that balance in a healthy society. So I would just disagree with the idea that like it doesn't matter overall, because it does. It just shouldn't be something you concentrate on if you're not of the mind and ability and the position to do something about it, because then it will be counterproductive and it will influence your life negatively.
Yeah, and that's a fair correction. I do usually add this part, unless you, of course, want to do something about it. That's something that I usually add to this mix. But in this particular jazz, that was not included. Yeah, I agree with this. If you see an injustice you actually want to do something about, but here's the thing: the majority of people, they just get all the negative effects of thinking this way, and none of the actual doing something about it. So they just basically live in this bubble of everything is wrong, and they hate everything when in reality they can enjoy everything. But there's what is the percentage of people actually do something about it? You know, like it's like the majority of people don't. They just kind of talk about it online and they think that's a form of activism. It's not. They're not. It's in order to really induce change, here's what I'm talking about. Like I'm talking about the people. I'm not talking about the things that are in the open and we have influence on, like things that can be swayed with elections, or even things that you can go and protest against. Right. I'm talking about the people that believe in types of conspiracy theories, like the one, for example, with what is it, prison Earth, things like this, or they believe in a level of elites that basically, like control the world. So that's what I mean. Like, okay, now what? Like you think if somebody has that power, you think that your comment on Instagram is going to change any of this? Or you think that they didn't already think about how to influence you en masse? That's what I mean. It's like it's like
Yeah.
it's so self-congratulatory, and it's delusional, but it really doesn't also add anything to the. Here's an example. People comment very strongly about political things, right? We in the last maybe decade, I think, because people kind of gained a little bit more access to like constant information. I think there's a big delusion that was created that somehow everybody in the actual secret agencies and intelligence and special forces and all of that stuff, somehow I think people start believing that they're all kind of just either nefarious or just players or just idiots, and like they think that all the stuff that kind of comes out to the surface or the thing that you get to talk about is kind of like that's about what there is to know. Do you know how many things on a regular, not telling you, but just speaking in general, how many things happen a day that the CIA does or these secret organizations do that actually keep things balanced? Do you know how many people a day are being offed? Things like this. It's just like it's inconceivable the level of structure and secrecy that is actually going on that is keeping things kind of afloat. So within that scheme, if you believe there's a person that this is all the stuff that you already don't know, and this is pretty mainstream stuff, like you don't need, this is not even a conspiracy theory, just like that's obviously the truth, right? But beyond that, if you're postulating a person who has like that level of control that people believe that they're like, start wars and they like things like this, Okay, well, that means that person, according to your belief, that person can pull strings on a level that is above these organizations. They're above that. You think that your comments would change that? That's what I mean. Like if you the thing you yourself believe in precludes you from being able to influence it if the level that you believe is that one. Because if you just put that kind of entity on that pedestal to say, even though it's that grand, I cracked it and I'm fighting it. I mean, they're just, they're a self-perpetual nonsense machine that is. That's my take on it. Would you not agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say one of the important framings that you just shared is if you believe in this this extremely high level of complexity, this system that transcends barriers of laws and spirituality and space-time, that's keeping things under wraps. Yet it's talk about it is available on the ClearNet, and it's available to you. I get what you're saying. I think it's important to keep things in context. And there's also an argument to be made for, hiding things in plain sight, misinformation through overinformation and all that. But at the end of the day, listen, I think another good theory, another good example of a conspiracy theory that touches on this is some of the proponents of flat Earth. Right? There's one thing that I do respect about certain people in that community is the ones that go out and they test it for themselves. They come up with ways to using the scientific method, using their understandings of Euclidean geometry, and applying their hypothesis to things that they know are testable. Totally respect that. I think that's amazing. And if it takes something like Ice Wall to make you go out and do science, I'm fucking all for it. But if we get to the point where I've seen multiple cases of this, multiple videos, where they get to the point where they develop, they devise these really clever experiments that, should conclusively prove one way or another. And I can think of 3 occasions right now where the test conclusively proved that there was curvature. And they then refuse to accept the results of their own experiment that they devised. So there's kind of like a catch-22 there. It's like, okay, great. Okay, so you're not, okay. Again, I give them credit for, not quitting right away. Not calling it quits after the first failure.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. But after a certain point, okay, we got to look at the facts. Okay. And then again, the question that you brought up is like, okay, but to what end? Right? And even if there was this massive conspiracy and there was a whole system of gyroscopes and magnets and everything to throw your test off, and it's all this big, massive conspiracy, to what end? What does it change in your everyday life if somebody is making up the whole round earth thing? You know what I mean? It's
but also on a practical level,
futility, I find.
There's exactly, but there's a more, I guess, slightly nuanced point that I have about this. But Dawn has been waiting to ask something to talk about. So let me have her ask what she wanted to ask, and then we'll get into that one. How are you, Dawn?
Hey, Danny, you're one of the few people in the world I would actually ask this question. I think you've spoken with me before, and I'm.
Yeah, I remember you very well, of course.
I've been doing these actualization, I'll call them experiments, and a lot of them are coming to fruition very quick. And I have recently been having a feeling that I'm not on the same timeline as other people, or I shift frequently. And one actually smacked me in the face recently, where I had a family member that came to me and was very adamant about some things that had happened in the past. I mean, to the point of gnashing teeth and crying and asking me questions. And I remember bits and pieces, or I have bits and pieces of what makes sense to what they're trying to bring to me. But I, honest to God, would swear on the Bible, I do not know what they're talking about. And I should know, because the things they said to me were so prominent that I know logically myself, I would have taken actions or different actions if I had experienced what they said I had experienced. And it blew me away, and a very close person to me. And I sat there for a day, actually did some plant, to be honest with you. I just thought about it, trying to make sense of what is going on. And as I was doing the plant, I was on this platform, and I had somebody, a friend of mine, yanked me into the room, and he said, "Oh, there you are." And he said, "Do you feel like you've been missing time lately?" And the whole group said to me they were experiencing the same exact thing that I'm going through. So I don't know. I don't, you know me, I'm very open-minded.
Yeah.
I always test things and I'm grounded. But this was so impactful that I just cannot I know that person's not insane, and I know I'm not insane.
So why would you?
There's no
What
way
would
it
you?
could be a mistake.
So you're saying? Let me get this straight. So you're saying that there are types of conversation that everybody are raving about, and you don't know what they're talking about, and it seems like they expect.
I had family members confront me about the events that happened in the past.
Uh-huh.
These events were so permanent. There's no way I would have not remembered them. There's some very close to me. And I sat there for a day thinking, am I insane?
More than one person?
One
More than one person confronted you on the same event?
confronted me about multiple events. And then that day, as I was on plant trying to sort it out for myself, friends yanked me into the room and said, "Oh, there you are. How do you feel like you've been missing time?" And they all said the same thing to me. They're going through the same exact thing I'm going through.
Are the family members?
No, friends.
Friends.
Other friends. Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, so I'm open to it. There's a lot of this has been going on recently that people were talking about it. It's just that for me, the thing that isn't clear there, because here's the thing: if you believe in a multi-way multiverse in which your consciousness kind of jumps between worlds, it's hard. I'm having a hard time imagining, and actually, maybe Sean can weigh in on this. He has a pretty great mind when it comes to these like spitballing free thoughts about things that sound pretty wild, but maybe who knows, right? The thing that I'm having a hard time with is why, if you're jumping between timelines, the thing that would make sense to me is you do this all the time. Like it just happens all the time. That's literally what's happening all the time. But then why would all of a sudden you would have a mismatch? Like, because you're proceeding forward, right? So are you saying you jump to a timeline in which certain events are discontinuous, or like they didn't actually happen?
This is what I'm saying. I don't know, because they told me that they had confronted me about certain things and very, very poignant things that would have been extremely.
So I don't want to probe, because I know that some of it's probably very personal. But can you give me one example?
As much as you want.
Okay.
As much as you want. I'm trying to sort it out. I am trying to make sense of it. I know they're
Are
not
they
the same.
world events that you don't remember, or personal events?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Would they have? So hold on, because people are also talking at the same time on Discord. I'm gonna tell you some of the questions because you might not be hearing it. Casey is asking, are they world events or personal events? Like events that happen in the world or happen with you? With personal. Okay, so give us an example.
One of my family members is gay.
Is what?
They told me they're gay.
Yeah.
And they said to me that they told me they were gay.
Ah.
And that I did nothing. And I know there's no way that is possible. Because I know me, and I would have done different actions than what I had done.
So question.
They were mad at me for not taking particular actions.
So question. Wait, but let's go one at a time. I want to try and discern this with you. So let's take that as an example. When did they say they told you this? Years ago, months ago, days ago, weeks ago?
It's about 30 years ago. About 30 years ago. But it was more than one event. They were also mob attacked. They said they were mob attacked, and they had told me none of this.
Based on their sexual identity?
Yes.
Okay. So that fits the same narrative. Let's just place that in one category, because people who, so let's find out, does that person usually trustworthy?
Yes.
And So you didn't know, and okay, if this was 30 years ago, this is someone you know well, right? In your family?
Yes.
Were you not seeing them? Like, do you not see them with a partner that is like a of the same sex?
They were exploring at the time. They were bisexual at the time.
Oh, but they told you they're not bi, they're fully gay.
They said that they told me that they were gay, but I remember them being what I assumed to be bisexual.
Well, I mean, that's an honest mistake, isn't it? Like, that's not the crazy.
The crazy part is they said they told me they were gay.
Yeah, but
and
that's
I,
not
and
a.
I didn't accept it. They were mob attacked, and I didn't do anything about it. And all those are very prominent things.
No, that's a
that I know
prominent
I-
thing, but that's still like I don't know. Maybe there's some details there that maybe you don't know that might be important for this. But to me, if I'm just hearing what you just said, that is not an event that I would put outside of the realm of possibilities. That after 30 years, you would just not really clock it the way they thought you should have, or like that makes perfect. That's a normal thing that happens to people. Like somebody told you something, and you just either were daydreaming at the time, or it just didn't like the situation in which they told you. Did they give you details like where were you, what you were doing?
Would you forget that?
Well, if it's between gay and bi, that's not an easy thing to confuse. Like that's not a that's if you wouldn't know that they're even at all on the spectrum, like that would be news, right? You'd be like, "Oh my god, like what? Like I thought you were with this wife all the time." That would be a crazy event. Like if you would think they were married to a woman and then after 30 years like, what are you talking about? I told you that I was dating guys since I don't know that would be crazy. But if but if the thing is a spectrum, and I get what you're saying that if there's something there that is very personal, that sounds like it doesn't make any. Why would you ever miss that? But that's the thing. The mind is pretty feeble. Like it does that. Like it's just, there's some events that you know maybe not that kind of a difference, but definitely differences that I thought I knew the whole time what was happening with someone in my life that was very close to me, and later they told me what that was not at all what was going on, and it was something completely different. But I was like, oh, I guess I don't know where I got that idea, but like it would never occur to me. Oh, it's a different timeline. Like from that's why I think Casey was asking if it's world events or personal events. Because Casey would correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what he was alluding to is that if it's personal events, we confuse those all the time. Like it's just that's a normal thing for me.
Can buy that. Well, how
Yeah,
about they
this-
were mob attacked and I did nothing?
The-
They were mob attacked and I did
did
nothing.
they tell you what was the situation in which they told you this?
Yes.
Okay, what was it?
They lived with me and they told me that they were mob attacked and they came back to me and told me and I did nothing.
Where were you? Like where were you when they were telling you?
I lived in North Carolina.
So they came to your house and told you?
No, they lived with me at the time. And then later on, it's a family member.
I understand, but the specifics. Were you sitting in the kitchen eating soup? Like what were you doing exactly?
When they told me about they were mob attacked?
Yeah.
I don't remember because I don't.
Exactly. But do they remember? But do they remember? Do they remember what you were
They
doing?
say they do.
Okay, what were you doing?
I don't think I asked them specifically.
So
what I
this
was
is so
doing
this
at
is
the
exactly so right now this is not so much as like science, this is more detective work, right? This is what a detective would ask you. Because what detective looks for is that they know that the first thing that you look for the things that are not congruent is how people remember things and misremember things 30 years ago. That's like a case closed. Like if
time. It is. It's a lot.
yeah, well, no, because people confuse memories. Like you can have a completely confabulated memory that they might have a completely confabulated memory of telling you that never happened. They thought they told you and they remembered it that way, or had a vivid dream about telling you, woke up, then instantiated in their brain 10 years later that they already told you, and then they were upset about you for not like that happens all the time. That's not a crazy event. Yeah, that would easily be explained by
I
this.
feel better now because I think so either I'm insane or they're insane or
No, they just misremembered. By the way, that's the difference between confabulation and lying. And some people use them interchangeably to kind of allude to lying, but saying confabulating as a trying to be nicer. But no, confabulation literally means a misplaced memory. You literally kind of you're adding a portion to the story that never occurred, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, confabulation only talks to about the ones that was unintentional, but I'm not sure. I think it's what it means. But literally, people do this all the time. Like, you add a tiny extra detail in the story because it made sense, and then that's how you remember it now because you told the story this way. And it's very often like I have a crazy long-term memory, like crazy, like almost photographic. Like, I can walk on the streets when I was like 3 years old, like seeing the stuff that I was walking with my parents. Like, I remember, I don't know why, but it's a very strong memory for me. And I know there are certain events that are kind of a blur, that I'm not sure they're a memory. And I'm only 42. So people, like, the older they get, like, it happens more and more and more. And 30 years ago, man, that's like the fact that it, and especially because a traumatic event was involved, that is 10, 20, 30 fold more likely that there's some confabulation or confusion around these events. If they were listen, being mob attacked, that's crazy. That will traumatize a person for life, right? Especially if it has to do around their identity. And by the way, I'm really sorry that that happened to him. But the fact that that happened, they were so they were so traumatized in that moment. The first thing I would think is like, he probably misremembered what actually happened after. He easily might have had dreams about trying to resolve it, and in the dream, he might have come to you and tried to tell you, and he felt, what is not do like? It doesn't even make any sense. How could somebody really close to you not do anything? You were either not listening, or he never told you. Like, it doesn't even compute, right? Like, there's no.
That's why I could have been insane or I'm insane, but I know they're not insane. I know them very well, and I trust them very well.
Yeah, I know. I don't think he's lying. I think he's genuinely misremembering it. And yeah, I mean, that's not a crazy event for me. But regardless, by the way, regardless to that particular event, and thank you for sharing. Um, I'm open to the possibility that you might be, that we might be switching timelines, and maybe you jump to a timeline that, like, things didn't happen. I just think that before we jump there, it's a much more likely explanation that people just don't remember well, which is, we know for a fact to be the case. It's just always. That's why in the court of law, another person's account is just the worst form of evidence possible. You just try and collect as many of them as possible and build a story. But people confuse events all the time.
I think people feel false memories.
Absolutely.
They feel false memory.
Absolutely. I don't want to postulate because I don't know the person. I don't know what happened. But, like, I would definitely think that that's what happened before I would think that you jump timelines.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that sounds. Obviously, people forget things. I obviously know that. I mean, everybody does. But this was such a. It was an identity. Like this was so impactful. I thought this isn't something that could be forgotten or confused or
It has to do with how people think that information is almost like linear reception. Like, I said things, you therefore must have understood. How often was somebody talking and then you realized, oh, shit, I wasn't listening? Like, how often did that happen, right? And you're on autopilot, you just nod, and then you realize you were thinking what you're going to get for groceries today. Do you know how many conversations get lost in that, just that alone, where people just can't, and then you're not going to say, hey, sorry, I wasn't listening. You try and catch on, and if you can't, well, that's what happened. I don't know what happened. So that's it, and that's the end of that. And then people will later tell you, what do you mean I told you? It's like, sorry, like, lapse of attention.
I'm the only one doing that. To let you know, there's a group of people. There's a person in the chat right now that's saying I think she jumped multiple people.
Well, your audio went in and out for a second. So, like, what multiple people?
There's the person in here. They think I jumped timelines, and the reason I brought that up is I have a chat group that I talk about many things, and they pulled me into the group, and they all feel like they're jumping timelines. They all feel like there's these shifts happening.
Right, but that's already, but that's a so again,
Right?
but that see, this, the way that I think, just in general, is that I, even though I'm allowing for the possibility to be real, I'm constantly trying to balance it with, okay, what would be another explanation that would make as much sense, if not more sense. And in this case, yeah, if you believe, I know it's a meme, right? It's the fact that we're jumping timelines. That's a very known meme. That's not new information. A lot of people believe this. So if you belong to a group of people who partakes in that meme, and it lives within a memeplex, which means it lives with other forms of idea that kind of work really well together, it's a self-reinforcing story. And then if you
Yeah.
with a lot of people, they'll be like, me too, me too. And then, it's so exciting, and there's camaraderie there. So that, again, that it's very likely that that's also what's going on. You just kind of reinforcing each other's.
You're coming back with groupthink.
Yeah, and by the way, there's nothing wrong with groupthink. It's just that, if you're asking me, do I really think you're jumping timelines? On what level are you asking me this? If you're asking me on we're sitting down and talking about cool ideas level, I'll be like, maybe that's cool. Like, I'm totally open to it. If you're asking me, would I bet my life on it? No. Like, I would, like, I would absolutely want, like, a real investigation of this if I am interested in answering these questions for real. And
Waters. How would you test the waters? That's a hard one for me to like. How would you test whether you're jumping timelines?
I don't think that's my issue with all of these. That's my issue with they seem to be tautologies to me. In other words, they're just kind of like reinforcements of themselves. This idea of jumping timelines, I told you, what doesn't make sense to me about it is that there has to be a mechanism by which this happens, if it happens. And if it happens, then, and by the way, I do think that's how things move, but it's you would never be any wiser. Like, you would not know, because they're all kind of adjacent to each other. And if you're jumping from one to another, like to a completely different one, well, we have to come up with some rational, like, explanation as to, even in this, like, very far-fetched scenario, like, how did that happen? Like, why did you jump that timeline? What happened there? If you have no framework whatsoever, then you're just fumbling in the dark. And by the way, this is my issue also with all the stuff about what is it, the Mandela effect, right? If you believe that that's what's happening, why is it that you remember? Why would you remember then? Or what?
They confronted me. I had no memory of it at all. They confronted me. They had the memory I did not.
But they might be misremembering.
Oh, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah, so it's and then the older you get, the more it's going to happen. It's just that's just the kind of the nature of how we, how we.
They're about 40, so they're about 40. So
Oh, 40 is definitely old enough to start forgetting quite a bit. No, for sure. Like, even in the 30s, this is not it. Also, don't forget that we are now entering a stage, the kind of which people never lived through. So, there's this idea, and I think that it's real, and it tracks. People say, people think of evolution in terms of time, but there's this idea that evolution is not measured by time, but by degrees of changes. And you can offer a lot of different ways to calculate this. And by the way, this tracks because, for example, we know that even evolution by natural selection happens a lot faster in populations of creatures that have millions of babies, because they go through the iteration really fast. Like, we can see, Sean can probably correct me here, but I think it's fruit flies. I think it's one of the faster ones. But there's, like, all kinds of bugs that we can see evolutionary traits changing in a person's lifetime, sometimes in a matter of decades. And that's unheard of in terms of evolutionary terms of, like, primates, let's say, because we don't reproduce in that rate. So reproduction rate is actually what causes it. So you can talk about evolution in terms of informational copies that were made of that thing, which kind of ties back to informational universe and all that stuff. But even without that, so if you think about it that way, the evolution, the iterations of kinds of evolutions that happen in the last 100 years, the reason that it there's more evolution happen in 100 years than happened in the entire history of the planet until that point, because most of the evolution is now taking place inside of humans' brains, not outside. Like
Right.
these informational patterns that then do become physical things are actually going inside of human brains and largely in culture. So it's distributed through culture, which is the operating system, and then we are kind of like nodes on that operating system, and we have our own kind of computational system. And memes, they kind of jump from system to system, copy themselves, all these ideas, and then they have to compete with other ideas in one person's head to survive. And then they also jump to if they survive enough, and they also make the person express them. So like they make the person also want to express them. Jokes are like that. All kinds of infectious ideas like that. And then you tell other people, and then people also want to repeat them. And if they win the evolutionary game inside of people's brains and across people's brains in the culture, well, these ideas dominate and they evolve very quickly, very fast. So because of that, the amount of processing happening from moment to moment, because of the amount of information we are now exposed to, you can say that the last 10, 15 years are akin to 100 years ago. So it's like the amount of information that a person would forget is astronomically higher than before, because they didn't have to pay attention to that many things. So all of this stuff makes a lot more sense in terms of people's confusion than actual physical things taking place, because I think that that's just a much more likely explanation.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean,
Of course.
It was very off-putting to me because I'm pretty well balanced, and I'm very open-minded. I talk about everything, but this kind of threw me off balance a little bit. And I was wondering, when you're talking about reality and you were talking about your levels of reality, I was wondering, could I be shifting levels and coming back and shifting it somehow? Like,
People swear by this. So the levels that I'm talking about, you're not going to be shifting through them. The levels I'm talking about, that you're going to have a layer of it would be equivalent to if we build a whole layer of simulations like humans, like Sims, and we're going to know they're conscious. So they're not going to be jumping to our level. They're always going to be running on our substrates. That's just how it is, right? We can maybe find ways in which they can interact with things in our layer, but it's always going to be under some control, because we understand the mechanism by which their worlds are created. So it's not going to be that kind of a thing. Now, within the same layer, you might have different, you can jump between timelines and things like this, but that would just kind of be like versions of the game, which again, I think is actually what's happening. It's like all the possibilities executed once, it saves on computation. That's why quantum computation makes more sense, because actually it requires less of running the same thing over and over and over again. It all kind of executes at once, and it even borrows from each other's operations. It's a very interesting and intricate system. I would think, if it's a computational system. But no, you're not in that model. If you want to talk about jumping timelines, you have to talk about the technical part of it. Like how. What it's not like we know nothing. Like, we don't know everything, but it's not like we know nothing. We know quite a bit. Like the fact that quantum computers work, we figured things out. Like we understand certain things, and then the equations that govern the wave function, there's limitations. You don't just
real fast.
Yeah, of course, go ahead.
Okay, so you were saying how earlier I heard you saying something along the lines of, when it comes to like these evil entities potentially manipulating reality, that's not what's going on, because you just said like things don't have to make sense, right?
No.
And
It's just that it's a no. So what I was saying is that if you posture, first of all, if something is on a level that we're talking about here, which means that it's literally simulating us and everything here, they don't need to manipulate anything. They can do whatever they want. They can turn you off right now. It's like it's not like you have some kind of a power distribution that can be struggled with, so to speak. It's just the wrong kind of like it's like saying will the Sims that we run will ever revolt against us? We'll pull the plug. Like it's not in the cards to make any difference there. So
You
it,
know me.
the what?
No, maybe this is the part I missed. But how do you know what the construct is made from, and how do you know that how do you know where the hierarchy of that construct is coming from? Like they may have a construct and they may a subprogram of something else, or maybe a subprogram of something else.
But
So how
there
do you
has to be well, there's a lot there. There's a lot of it rests on kind of like my observations in the space that stretches over decades, and you can take it or leave it. That's my impression of what's going on so far. It's as good as anybody else's who writes a book about what they saw about some parasites that. So the point is that if you're going to postulate these things seriously, then if I'm going to take your argument seriously, then we're going to talk about it seriously. And then we're going to ask questions that are a little bit more serious than somebody on YouTube said so. Here, Cosmo thinks it's very interesting.
So this is always the thing that got me whenever somebody wanted to do like a scientific evaluation of jumping dimensions. How are you supposed to do any observable, testable anything when it comes to a person and their claims of being from an alternate timeline? Like there's nothing you can observe, there's nothing you can test in this reality unless you directly have an experience for you to come to any conclusion that people who have had direct experience with jumping dimensions would know. Like, I'm sorry, but you don't know. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter how many words you hear, until you have the experience, you don't know.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with that. But in Dawn's case, so like this is where I take each case individually. So Dawn, we spoke before. She's been listening to my channel for a long time. There's definitely a lot of readiness to observe what in fact is going on. So I know that Dawn doesn't belong to the family of people who just kind of like just run with whatever. A lot of people do, and I have a very clear opinion about this. I'm happy you're here. I'm happy to debate you, but we just strongly disagree about what things are. Like it's just if you think that knowledge works according to just reciting some magic words like 369 or golden ratio, like it's just like you don't understand how knowledge works. This is something that Nico keeps pointing out, and I think it's a really I think he only means it a little bit like a zinger. I think mostly he means it respectfully, but it is a truth. A lot of people, for example, that tell you all this stuff about like how they downloaded equations, they got to download, now they have the equation for the gravitational wave of the thing and it's going to make things fly and all that stuff. These are the people that if you ask them to write a linear equation, they can't do it. They can write a simple linear equation. So they think that they can do the most basic thing in mathematics, and yet they know these like super complex things that most physicists don't understand. It's absurdity on top of absurdity on top of absurdity. And this is why I'm trying to listen. What is the real drive behind these grand ideas? Sometimes somebody derives a lot of meaning out of it, but they're not obnoxious about it. There are a lot of people that, which by the way, I'm super like the kind of person that comes and says, man, I don't know, but like truly, it just really feels right that I'm kind of jumping between timelines. And I swear to you, like the more I think about it that way, somehow I manifest all these things in my life. Is it true? Don't know, but like it seems to be working for me. I have no problem with that person. It's like, you do you, enjoy. But if you're gonna come to me and you're gonna start arguing with me about no, that's how it's going on. The archons are doing X and these guys are doing Y. You don't understand. You're actually talking to the Gazabagulu from Star 6. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. It's like, what are you talking? The what?
I don't know if you remember the first day I met you.
The what? The what?
You asked me, I don't know if you remember the first time we talked. I will say this though. You asked me as we were talking about things, did you read this book? And I said no.
Okay.
You said, do you know that person? I said no.
Okay.
You said, do you know that? I said no. But I was telling you things that for some reason you were relating to these things you already knew. And I had never read the books. I had never communicated with those people. I had never been in that. But yet I had that same almost level of understanding.
Yeah.
That because we were having the conversation, but I had no book knowledge of it. I had no group knowledge of it, and I had never researched these. I do now, But at that time, I had done none of that research, and yet I was having these same concepts that you were asking me about, like as you were relating them to things. But I had never studied it. I
So
just
what-
somehow, when you pull a download, and I know this sounds odd, but sometimes you do get what appears to be information that you don't get from a book and you
So-
don't get from another person. You just, it's like a knowing, and I can't explain that to you. There's no
Right.
way to-
So in order, so I actually don't remember this, but we can talk about specific examples. But the beauty of knowledge, like real knowledge, is that it belongs to no one, and it's actually truly universal. Things are either true or they're not. Now, no matter if an agent knows it or not, right? So you might read something true in a book, you might read something false in a book. You might see a dream in which a certain kind of information was revealed to you, and you try and apply that information, and it turns out that information actually tracks. Where do these truths come from? Well, they're just a description of how the world arranges itself. And the description can either match the arrangement or mismatch the arrangement. And the only thing that determines how true a statement is the delta between that arrangement and the statement. If the statement describes how whatever the world is doing accurately, that's true. That's what it's meant by that, right? And then this insistence that people have, for example, well, it's just, it's my truth. It's like, I don't think you know what the word truth means. It's like, your truth, what you mean by that is that that's your description that makes sense to you, but that description can be wrong. And then it's not your truth, it's just your description, right? So then if you're saying to me, I don't remember exactly what, if you remember any of them, please share.
I had talked to you, my first conversation with you was I had been under a chemical that starts with the letter K.
Chemical that starts with the letter K?
Yeah, an IV
Oh.
infusion of a medicine that begins with the letter K.
Okay.
And I'm going to stick that name on this platform.
Okay.
You'll get cold. And I was given mega doses of it.
Okay.
And I started having realizations of things that I had never had before.
Can you give me an example of that realization? One realization?
First of all, I was an RN, and I didn't realize that I could see my body sitting down on the table. I didn't realize I could navigate with all my senses under ketamine. I seemed to go, sorry, I said the word. I seemed to be somewhere else and had all my senses. Like,
Okay.
where am I? How long have I been here? Which way should I go? What do I want to do? Which was completely different than I had had surgeries and I had done an anesthesia. It was completely different. And it really shocked me that I could look down at my body. I could navigate in the space. I had all my logic about, I knew who I was, even though I didn't know why I was there. I could see the anesthesiologist
So-
sitting down in the
Right. So
chair.
you describe, so okay, but let's get into it. So you're saying that you basically had an out of body experience, right?
I mean, I guess that's what you call it. I have no other word for it. I mean,
So what is the part that you said that when I asked you about a book?
oh, well, I was having realizations that consciousness was not art. It was not, consciousness was more like a construct.
Okay.
I was,
Yeah.
I was in that construct and I was experiencing. And as we were having this conversation, it progressed. Since this was the first time you had met me, you
Yeah.
asked me if I knew this person, and I said no, and you said that person no. And you said, "Well, did you read this?" And I said no. But all this simply came because I had these experiences that I had never had. Also,
But-
experienced sounding, and I didn't know if sounding existed.
But if I'm not mistaken, the reason that you and please correct me if I got it wrong, but my impression was just now that the reason that you voiced all this is because I was basically saying things in a negative vein against people who claim to be able to get real information from higher spaces. And to that, your answer to me is, well, don't you remember that I had these
Yeah.
realizations from the space? Okay, so so there's a
Without any books, without any conversation,
Right.
without any-
So there's a big difference. So there's nothing in what you said that doesn't make sense, and there's a huge difference between saying a general impression about what you think is going on that has to do with the thing you have direct access to, i.e., your consciousness. So there's certain truths about consciousness that become apparent to everyone who go deeply enough investigating consciousness. you hit upon one of these universal truths. Even here, though, I would say, I've arrived at the same truths by exploring the same space. You've arrived at the same truth exploring the same space. One of the possibilities is that we arrived at a universal truth because a lot of other people arrived at truth. The other possibility that we all need to be open to, we all got it wrong. That's also a possibility. But we can, right now, I agree with everything you're saying about what you're saying. However, there's a huge difference between that and the example that I gave where people come and say, I pulled this equation. Because equation is a very specific description of something that requires meticulous amount of work on your mind to be able to read. It's a language. And what I was pointing out is very often that I was making the distinction between people who say, look, I'm not sure, but they're not pretending to know too much. They just say, it just feels right to me, and I'm not trying to convince anyone, but just how I live my life. I'm starting to have some issues with people who which is not you, by the way, so I'm not talking about you, but like there's definitely kinds of people that, they come on and they're like, they're very adamant about their impression that they truly know, and everybody needs to listen to them because if everybody could just understand this one thing they know, everything would be better. And they don't know anything. They're just kind of running in circles around themselves. That is a thing that I'm having a hard time with, and this is why I fully take piggy piggy butt. I love your handle. I totally fully take his point, which is that no matter, it's kind of astounding that people think that just because they had an experience, including myself, by the way, like people come back after one or two experiences and they're convinced that what they saw is this is it. Like this is there has to be a lot more, like like a bigger filter.
And I would like to say something here.
Sure.
Okay, so you were talking about the whole equations thing, not being able to pull something out of thin air, right?
Mm-hmm.
And them not being able to do a linear math equation, a certain equation. Right? I wanted to say, first of all, to that, I think it's very kind of obnoxious and a little foolish to, no offense, to try to expect somebody to do an equation. If you want to come down to it, like literally math itself, human math is very subjective. Like I think we can agree.
No, we don't agree on
to
that.
a certain extent. Like
no.
Yes.
No. So this goes to a very deep. No, this goes to a very deep philosophical question of whether math is discovered or invented. I think you think that it was invented, right?
I think our perception of math, the way we perceive math, the way we do math, that math is invented because we perceive it.
So we disagree on this fundamental assumption.
Is a subjective thing that exists, but our perception of it is a subjective thing. So we need to invent a language to understand something that is objective. We can never know in reality something objective with a subjective mind.
So that statement by itself shoots itself in the foot. Because when you're saying you cannot know something objective with a subjective mind, you're speaking it from a subjective experience. So you made a truth claim about a world that you postulated to exist without your mind, when that world is not possible because the thing that is postulated there is some kind of a state that does not include the description of it, which can only be uttered by an agent that will always have its sense of subjective experience. Now, the question that you just touched on, which is obviously we're not going to resolve it tonight because it's one of the oldest and deepest philosophical questions in mathematics, which philosophers argued over for I don't know how long, but whether mathematics is discovered or invented, I think there's what is being meshed here is too much is made from this idea that there's some kind of a hierarchical power to what we call objective and some disadvantage to what we call subjective. I think that separation alone did a lot of harm in terms of how people think about this problem. I'll be more specific. When people say objective, in almost anything has to do with humans, what they really mean is that there's some consensus of all the subjective points in this level of emergence. And a lot of physicists would insist, no, there's some fundamental reality that we constantly interact with because we're constantly probing it. And there's some truth to that because there's some regularities that appear to always be the same. But even there's so many different philosophical traps about like what does it mean to actually be regular and things like this. But in the end of the day, anything that will ever be relevant to us, kind of like this horizon of relevance, will always be consisted of some consensus, and it is called consensus reality, that we all share because of parameters that are regular enough for a certain amount of time. So, everything has to interact with the electromagnetic field, which means that you can't walk through it. It's hard. It's physical. We don't really need to agree that the couch is there. We can both sit on it. We're both not going to be able to walk through it. What consolidates the regularness of it for us is what we call the laws of physics. Are they ultimately kind of fundamental and unmovable? I don't know. Which I don't think we will ever know. But for all intents and purposes, for anything that will ever be relevant, that consensus is what we call our shared world. And what science does, it probes that world. And what it says is, well, these things that we see that are always happening for all individuals under all descriptions, or under most descriptions, we would inculcate them in this category we call objective. But they assume the object, when in reality, your subjective experience, it always drifts a little bit away from mine. I don't know if you see the exact same couch as I do. Maybe you're, the way that your qualia works is maybe a little bit different, and I will never know, and you will never know. We just know we always bump into it. But ultimately, there's not, you're not in disadvantage by talking that you're experiencing something from a subjective point of view. Ultimately, you and I have to come to an agreement, and everybody together, through the kinds of language we develop, that we agree that for this period of time, most likely that's the most likely outcome. But very often these quote unquote objective things turn out to be wrong, because these large swaths of human descriptions fail when come to a new condition that we never saw before. So to me, this idea that, well, there's this external reality that we'll never gain access to, all we can ever hope for is kind of like this little dance we do with ourselves, and all things are always only kind of perpetuated by our own imagination. Well, you're basically describing a world in which you never really interact with anything real. And sure, you can say that, but ultimately there's clearly some regularities that you can observe, right? So are they objective or the subjective? I don't think that's the thing that matters. I think what matters is that there's certain things that always happen and will always be relevant to the kind of thing that we are. Even if you want to talk about some world that is completely discontinuous from ours, I don't really see the value in that point. But enlighten me. If you think that there's a value in seeing it that way, I'm all ears.
Trying to get to the point kind of along the lines of, okay, because me personally, I have had a specific dream where I saw an equation, and it actually allowed me to jump to through the multiverse, right?
Okay.
So I do feel like there is some significance to that.
What was the equation?
When it came to your whole little laser experiment, and when you said that you're seeing equations and stuff in the walls, I was like, okay, that might be related somehow to the equation that I dreamt about. But okay, so I hear you talking about this, and I think about, there was a guy, I believe he was a part of the discovery of the double helix of the DNA strand, and he actually, a part of that discovery was him dreaming up the shape, and a lot of actual like good ideas and concepts have come from dreams. But I just find it a little like closed-minded to be like, okay, look, that's cool that you have that equation and you have that idea, but if you can't solve this other abstract math equation that man, put together, then I don't believe you about this other scientific thing. Like,
No. That's not what I was saying. That's a straw man of what I was actually saying. That's not what I'm saying. What it was what it was describing is the fact that if you're going to say that you saw an equation, and by the way, if you want to share the equation, by all means, equation is only as good as the thing that it actually is does. So like if the equation should be describing something, it's a language, right? And by the way, Sean, a person never invents a new math. That's not a thing. A person can invent new notation to describe new kinds of relationship that we never thought about, but they're not creating new math. That's just I think that's a misapplication of language in this case. So mathematics, the way we use it, right, and what is meant by mathematics is not the way we write it. It's what it means. The meaning isn't changing. The meaning is most definitely not invented. The meaning is there. So like 2 + 2 = 4. Is that your choice that that's the case? Is that just consensus? No, that's an ingrained fact that points to itself. Now, forget about the fact that we actually have
certain conditions. That's true under certain conditions.
under the notation that it is described. So you can change. You can even in set theory, you can even change everything. You can create your own. In category theory, you can create your own categories. You can move the whole thing if you want, but the whole thing will move at once. So the relationships will maintain themselves. The relationships are the pure thing. The relationships you discover when you're using mathematics are there. They're just what they are. And you can ask, okay, but where are they coming from? That's a legitimate question. But they are what they are. And 2 + 2 is one of these. No, not under certain conditions. If you want to start, if you want to have a different base, so hexadecimal, whatever it is that you want to do, then everything you're going to do is actually going to mean still the same thing. It's just going to start from a different base, for example. So it's going to look different in the way it executes itself, but the relationships will stay the same. That's the point. The thing that math is around.
I could give you an example, and then you
Sure.
could like try to jump around.
Sure.
Like however kind of actually you want to with it, but literally 2 + 2. If you get two holes,
Mm-hmm.
and you put two holes together,
Mm-hmm.
you just get one big hole. You don't get four holes.
So you're confusing. So this is exactly the kind of confusion.
4 holes, you get one big hole.
Yeah. So okay, let me correct the confusion here, and then Nico can jump in because he actually has quite a bit of experience in mathematics. So there's a difference between tallying something or attaching a number to a physical thing and the abstraction of the number 2. The number 2 is not the same as 2 holes. They're not the same thing. 2 holes times 2 holes is not a thing you can do in the physical world. But 2 times 2 is something makes perfect sense in the abstraction world. The thing here is that there are general universal truths that arise from a certain particular kind of notation, not from all notations. There's certain notations that do not allow for universal functions. But our notations, the current full mathematical framework, does allow for universal framework. And yes, of course, it has its own bounds, which is what Turing discovered with the incompleteness theorem. But for all intents and purposes, you can describe infinitely many scenarios. And in set theory, you actually do deal with infinities. But ultimately, it is not the same thing. This is a mistake that Terrence Howard constantly makes. He does not understand that physical events and mathematical notations, they're not the same kind of thing. You can use mathematics to describe particular physical events, but you do not have the problem of 2 times 2 in the real world. It's just not a thing that you can ever execute because it's not a function that makes sense in a regular physical Euclidean space. Now, you can do things that would make sense because you can say, I'm taking 2 cubes and I want them 2 times. So I'm stacking 2 times 2. So I now have 4 cubes. Okay, I guess it's kind of like saying that you're taking something number of times, but that's really the notation that describes another physical event. And when you start going into more advanced mathematics, these relationships very often drift infinitely into esoteric realms that reality can never partake in. So those are just 2 different domains. The what?
I agree with you there. I agree with you 100%, and that's what I'm trying to say about when you were trying to say earlier, I agree. I was trying to say, look, you were talking about how certain things don't make sense in reality, even though they exist in reality.
No, in our reality, in our Euclidean
Yes,
space.
no.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Mhm.
And that's how you were. That's what I was trying to tell you about the Mandela effect. You were like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense because this and that. I'm like, yeah, because
No, but I'm not saying it doesn't make sense.
like,
I'm
this
saying there's a lot of.
You're not gonna make sense of it. You can't. I'm sorry.
Wait, I'm confused. I think I don't know if we agree or disagree about the Mandela effect. I'm saying that there's a lot of other better explanations. The Mandela effect before we allow for the possibility that we're actually jumping timelines. That's all I was saying there.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I agree because a lot of times, I personally would have to say, I believe that I have experienced the jumping of dimensions multiple times,
Mhm.
but I do, I have fallen into that trap where a lot of people who have had this experience will start to claim everything is that because it's such like a traumatic thing. You just want to think everything is happening or everything is centered around that event because it is pretty dramatic when it happens.
Mm.
But base reality is jumping timelines. Every second is another
No,
existence.
not the same thing. That's not the same thing. You're not thinking of the same thing that's happening here.
Well,
Are you
explain.
talking about crossing universes, like
We're talking
crossing.
about alternate timelines, like the rainbow is a different color dimension type of thing.
Oh, you're saying crossing world lines. Well, in physics, they call that a world line, which is kind of like every point in space and time has like an evolution, and that's like a world line. Yeah, I think Einstein said you need like a wormhole for that.
So okay, so
There's multiple-
so the question is, let me ask you.
I just want to say one thing. There's more than one way to skin a cat. That's it. Okay.
No, 100%. But no, I was about to ask you a specific question. What do you think? And maybe the answer is you don't know, and that's okay. But like, did you ever think about like what is actually jumping? Like, what is the thing that is jumping?
Well, I would have to say the conscious.
Well, okay. How do you define separate consciousness versus the observer of the full wave function? Like, what is the thing that separates it?
I don't know what the full wave function of the.
So the wave function in the physics is basically kind of denoting. Think of the wave function as all the world lines unfolding at once, like they're all together, and then the many worlds they're basically all live somewhere on the wave function. So if you're postulating jumping between worlds, that means you just kind of disappeared in a discontinuous way from one part of the wave function, and you jumped inexplicably to another part of the wave function, which is why Nico was saying you would need a wormhole, like you would need some connection that.
Doesn't entanglement explain that?
The what? Sorry.
Doesn't entanglement explain that? That everything's entangled?
Well, entanglement is a peculiar one because I think that the fundamental state of everything is it's all entangled, and actually it appearing not entangled is actually the special case. It's just that we live in that special case. So for us, it looks the norm that it's not entangled, but in its base state, it is entangled. Exemplified by many experiments. For example, if you cool down a material, I think it's only helium, right? And you can let it cool down to cold enough, it becomes a new state of matter in which like all the particles don't know they're different particles. They just become kind of like this like substance that is just basically one thing, even though all the molecules are kind of like supposed to be separate, but they're one thing. And that tells me that the fundamental state, when you bring all the energy down fully, it's just all connected. It's just one thing. But because of this, imagine like a soup, okay? And because the soup is bubbling, because there's like a lot of excitation at the surface, that surface, which is not the soup, it's just the surface, right? But because of the energy and everything that's going on inside the soup, there's little like bloop, bloop, like on the surface. So these little excitations, they are the things that we see as particles. So they look separate, but ultimately they're all one thing. They're one soup. Now, this is not a perfect example, but it just can illustrate to you that like entanglement is not the special case. Entanglement is not the special case. It's the norm. We think of it as yeah.
That's what I was saying to you. If everything's entangled,
yeah,
then you don't really need to separate it into this.
But the world lines are postulated they're different separate experiences. You guys are the ones that are saying they look different. So we're talking about if you wait, hold on. Let's because we can go. Hold on, we can't go all at once. Hold on. Wait, brother. Hold on. Let Dawn finish and then we'll jump in. Go ahead, Dawn.
No, I'm saying you do your normal tracking, your correlations of things what you would associate to be your reality, your experiences, and all of a sudden, boom, it's just a huge change for everything almost that you normally.
I see what you're saying. No, I hear you. I've experienced things like this as well, but we're asking what is the more likely explanation. Okay, so
I think that entanglement allows us. See, I don't think timelines are linear. I think we make a mistake. In my opinion, okay, it's my opinion.
we're not saying they're linear. We're not saying they're linear, but they're linear. But they are linear to you. But they are linear to you. So they're not linear, but they're linear to you.
That's how we define our experiences. Like if the sun comes up in the morning, it goes down at night. That's how we define our experiences is in a linear way because that's how we construct our reality. I'm saying consciousness is not defined or limited by that. The consciousness itself is entangled everywhere all the time. And not even time's a thing that we could get about the subject. But it's entangled everywhere so that my consciousness doesn't need to jump. It just simply accesses.
But the question is what causes us to do so? If you're saying that anything is possible at any moment, then there's no regularity of any kind, and then there's no point of talking about anything. But if you're talking about a regularity that does occur, and then sometimes it breaks, we have to find a condition that causes it to break, and then talk about it. Like if we're seriously asking it.
Can it just be a frequency? My theory is that when you go under DMT, that your frequency shifts in your brain. And now your filters change and you access and perceive things that you don't normally perceive under your current state of your mind, your chemistry within
So I'll tell you how that statement hits me. It's kind of equivalent to saying, if I ask you why things happen in the universe, your response to me will be, well, atoms are doing something. You're not wrong, but you didn't give me any real information. So to say that you're changing frequency, therefore something happens, is equivalent to that for me. It's like, okay, but
let's say if you were to play your brain like a computer,
yeah,
and our computer is accessing certain information. Now, if I were to change the frequency of your processing unit,
yeah,
you may access different information that you didn't have available to you before.
But what is the difference? But what is the difference? The issue with that is that there's a lot of other descriptions you can give it that would make just as much sense, if not more. And the only way to know is if you actually can put it to the test. So I'm sure there are ways to put this to the test, but that's the thing that I would want to see. Now, hold on. So I want to be fair because we did have the order. So Piggy, you go first, and then Nico. I actually do want to get your take also on the math being discovered, or because I think you and I had this conversation before as well. Go ahead, Piggy. What do you want to say?
I think I'll yield my time so we can hear what Nico has to say.
Okay, sure.
Wow, there's a lot to go through, but I'll try to get through everything concisely. So, I think what you said was right, Danny. So the thing about math, I think, is you can define an infinite number of math systems, but the thing is, the math that is useful is objectively determined, right? And so Terrence Howard, for example, makes this really big error where he says 1 times 1 is 2. Now, you could define a math system to follow that rule, but it doesn't produce anything useful. The world looks very different if you extrapolate that to an entire system. And so the math that we use today is very objective. Now, there are maths that are very abstract that we use because they simplify a problem. But then once we...
Wait, you cut off. Maybe you were saying something so important that the universe, like, no, that's way too important. There's no, we can't have that said. This is great. Sean, why'd you go all quiet? Why are you texting? Talk to us, bro. Why are you being all so hard to get? Also, Sean's comment to you, Don, was that's not how computers work. Maybe the example of radio would have served your argument better. Yeah. So, like, if you're talking about computers, then yeah, you don't talk about frequencies. You're talking about how things execute through a program, which is different than a
I
frequency.
agree. Radio would have been a better example. He's correct.
Yeah.
I was just talking about changing the frequency within a processing unit or somehow allowing yourself to access information that you weren't having access to before. Because you had filters, you had limitations, and now your limitations were changed
Yeah.
for you.
No, I would agree that that's a very likely explanation. And but again, this needs to be tested. This needs to be like we have to figure out how we can test for this. Otherwise, it's very hard to know. Oh, okay. So, Piggy's saying can't hear anything. Wait, you guys can't hear me either? Me either? Hold on. Also, sorry, YouTube. We went on a full woohoo. Ebony's in the house. How you doing, Ebony? Ebony the Queen is in the house, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving to us. How are you doing, Ebony? I just now saw. Okay, so YouTube can hear me. Is unmute. Oh, that's music. Maybe we'll need to leave. Oh, so you guys can't hear anything even when I speak.
And who's snoring?
That's my dog. That's Cosmo right there. Look at him. Look at him. Can you guys see Cosmo? He's hold on. He's snoring so hard. Wait. Oh, it's the camera. Hold on. I'll change the camera here. Just please. Look at him. Look at this fucker. It's on my iPad and my books. Passed out. Hold on. Wait, so nobody can hear me? That's so weird. Oh, there it is.
Hello.
Yeah, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah, so I don't know if you heard any of that, but I lost.
No, I heard.
audio.
Yeah, I heard quite a bit of it, and then you disappeared at some point. So, like, just so we did hear when you said that most, all mathematics is based on objective things. There's a lot of different notations we can come up with. Oh, Terrence Howard, the mistake that he makes with the 1 times 1. What else? Yeah, just pick it up from there, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, as far as I think math is like pretty objective, right? It's a consensus-based system, and there's a lot of maths that you can invent. But I think the thing is, like, a lot of people think mathematically, but the thing is, math is kind of simple in the sense that it's just a system of rules. You just have to be consistent about applying those rules. Very similar to like the system we explored in the last members live with computation. It's just a system of rules. But if I can jump from math, so I kind of agree with you on math, but the problem, and you kind of invoked this whole conversation because of a criticism that I tend to give to people, which is,
oh yeah, I forgot that it was all around the thing. But what it was denoting, it wasn't just like and thank you for bringing it back for a second. I just want to say one word to Piggy about this. The point isn't, well, first read this one and tell me what that means. No. The point that Nico was saying, and like I said, only a little bit tongue in cheek. Linear equation is basically considered the simplest equation you can write, probably, right? So it's like the simplest. It's just a line, right? It describes a line. So the point isn't like, well, you can't solve this, you can't solve it. No, it's like, yeah, like if you're telling me that you think you wrote Shakespeare, but you can't spell cat. You see what I'm saying? That's the point. It's not it either works or it doesn't. And by the way, of course, the obvious thing that is behind all this is that if the equation works and we build something with it that is just like change the world, then that stands on its own. It stands on its own feet, 100%. But that's not what's going on.
I want to object here because I just want to say this one thing and that's it.
Sure.
I feel like there's an equivalent. Like you could put that and flip it on its head because some people will say have this bias and say, oh, you can't read, which a person will be illiterate.
No, it means you don't understand.
Well, then it's impossible for you to come up with that amazing, beautiful.
I just told you,
It's possible for them to still come up with good poetry and still not know, or literature and not know how to.
But
read.
that's
like
but
they can still.
No, but the thing. Okay, so
that's the thing.
I understand. The thing that this is why it's not a perfect example, because what is behind. So there's two things that I said I think you missed, because then this comment is like it already answered this comment. The first one is, in every case that I'm describing here, when people do this, their equation doesn't do anything. But when they insist that it does, and then you say, okay, but if you don't speak the language of equations, you don't understand what this says. Like you can write, like if you want to say I can channel Shakespeare, which by the way I highly doubt, right? So it's like there's a skill involved. But like I said, the other comment I think you miss is that if you write an equation, I don't care where you came up with it. If you came in a dream, you went into a trance and you came up with that equation. If that equation we then used it to build a spaceship that we could never build before, yes, that stands on its own feet, and it doesn't matter that you don't know any other equation. I agree, but that's never what's the case. That's never what's happening. People you're saying you had an equation. Do you have the equation?
Well, I had a dream about it, and I'm still trying to remember what the hell it looked like.
That's my point. It wasn't the equation.
I haven't been able to write it down.
But it's not the equation then.
With your thing, I haven't been able to write it down. Sorry.
But it's not the equation then. Go ahead, Nico. Sorry, I kind of cut you off in the middle.
So I think one of my criticisms is like oftentimes I think it's in the memeplex right now, but quantum mechanics is like very deep in the memeplex, and the problem that I have with that is that I think so. Quantum mechanics is interesting because there's quantum mechanics like the math, and then there is the philosophy of quantum mechanics, right? Which is like the interpretation of the math, and there's this very profound theory that goes behind that. And I'm not super well versed in that. I only know the math. Now the math does produce the theory, but a lot of the great thinkers, think about that theory. So I would even say like Danny knows more quantum theory or philosophy than I do, right? But the problem that I have with the quantum in the memeplex is I just see it invoked everywhere. Like even the concept of like frequencies or quantum tunneling, like I understand that the concepts make sense to people, but these processes like are very hard to control in just like a 2-atom system, right? And now we're talking about billion atom systems and trillion atom systems. And that's why like I get really annoyed. So I think it's the equivalent of like me joining this live and never have taken any psychedelics, but telling you guys all about psychedelics, right? And saying, oh yeah, like I know all about it because I know the neuroscience, right? I can, you guys, I hope would tell me to stay in my lane and come back after I, have experienced it, right? So I think it's a very similar thing where I always think like there's a lot that comes from these. So like that simple thing, like, oh, I can quantum tunnel, or I can quantum tunnel into a different dimension. I view it as like Danny and I had a conversation a few weeks ago about the mind space and then the actual Euclidean space, right? Like physical space. And I don't doubt like when people like Eddie Bravo said that he took salvia and lived a whole life as a fish with a family and everything, and then came back. Like, do I think he actually lived as a fish? No, but in his mind, did he have this rendering of an experience where he lived 100 years with a family under the sea? Yeah, I mean he experienced it, right? And he says he experienced it, and like that's valid. But I think there's a very big difference between physical reality or what we call reality and what can be rendered in the mind.
Okay, I need to jump in here.
1 second. 1 second.
Yeah, when it comes to reality, physical reality, I think a thing that people will come to understand when it comes to higher states of consciousness and awareness is that, yeah, ultimately the mind is I think the main construct here. And there is a connection to all things on even what we perceive to be inanimate objects. Like everything that exists in reality is directly experiencing reality, and experience is directly tied to consciousness.
Experience is consciousness.
Yeah, and everything in reality
So
is directly
we
experiencing
we
reality.
agree. So before Don challenges us, we agree on that, but it's not going to be all up for grabs. So consciousness still operates by some rules. It might be much more complex rules, but still by some rules. So all I'm asking is, what are those rules? That's it. Like it's not. I'm not disagreeing with you that ultimately consciousness is fundamental and it is the thing that give rise to all form and the inner representation of what it's like to be in the presence of that form. But it's not just anything. Because if it is just anything, there's no distinction there between that. It's just complete craziness and nonsense all the time. Clearly, at least for the period of time that we exist in this form, that's not the case. So at least in this little neighborhood, there's some structure that tells things how to be. Even if you want to say ultimately it's all consciousness, that doesn't change the fact that there's some rules by which it's operating. That's all I'm saying. Don, what did you want?
Rules, I mean, I'm not saying there's not rules, and I can't literally walk you through every rule, but I think, I mean, like physics, the laws of physics, that's a rule, right? I mean,
So
when it
yeah,
comes
so
to
that's
consciousness,
so maybe we're just talking past each other. I'm not negating the possibilities that we can jump timelines. I'm saying let's talk about how that happens. What I'm hearing so far, which by the way, the thing that got me on this whole journey that led me to the laser and all of this other stuff is that I was just not satisfied with the kinds of answers that I heard everybody from the spiritual side, from the scientific side. Everybody was just like, it was just not satisfying to me. On the scientific side, very often it's too close minded. But on the spiritual side, very often it's just like nonsense galore. Like nobody cares. It's like, it's just, it's almost like they found a car in the middle of nowhere and they've never seen a car before and they learned how to drive it. That's kind of like how I view the law of attraction, right? I'm interested. I want to open the hood. I want to understand how the engine works. I want to understand what actually causes it to go. How pistons work. Like that's what I'm interested in. That's the thing that animates me and what all my work is about. And what I'm trying to encourage more of is more specific thinking versus very general blunt thinking. The most, sorry, Don, I'll say just one more thing and then jump in. People write to me all the time with all of these theories, and some of them are actually amazing and fascinating. But at a certain point, when you get so many emails, it becomes very clear. It's like, okay, and they're like, well, did you think about that? I'm like, actually, yeah, kind of. Like I thought about a lot of things, but and then what? They're like, well, isn't it cool? I'm like, okay. Oh, so we're doing a different thing. Like I can think of a lot of really cool things, but that's not where for me, that's not where the rubber meets the road. It's what can you do with it? What can you show with it? And it's not even a matter of control. It's a matter of it is your relationship to the real truth about the world and yourself in it. So even if the truth is, which I believe it is, that we're all universal consciousness expresses itself in different ways, how can we talk about this in such a way that when you say the right thing, the world responds back and says, yes. It illuminates that corner of your understanding in such a way that it's very clearly you got it correctly. Getting something correctly is not just like a, in the old sense of like people think, oh, I just want to do everything correctly like on a test. No, it's transcendent. When you truly understand something, that's a divine experience. And it's not easy. It's really hard. When you truly get something correctly, there's infinite ways of having a rocket not work. There's only very few ways of having a rocket work. And when you manage to do it, it's very satisfying because you figured something out, because you told the world, and if you are the world and you told yourself, here, I got this part. There's this really beautiful opening there. But before we keep going back and forth, I do want to give Dawn her time because we promised. Go ahead, Dawn.
I agree with you, Danny, but I think what I'm hearing from you, and I'm sorry if I don't know if that's Nico, is that a person should have a certain knowledge base. So if you're going to tell me you came up with a mathematical equation, then you should have some kind of knowledge base that allows you to make sense of that equation that you're given.
You should understand what you're talking about. Yeah.
You have to have some type, you can't know what a word's not. You've got to have some knowledge base. Now, what I'm going to bring to you is I agree with you, but I had a remarkable thing happen to me that changed my mindset.
Okay.
At 27 years of age, I had no at all understanding of Eastern philosophy. I was only completely Western trained, no philosophy, nothing. And I was told by a friend to do these exercises that I thought was martial arts. I really thought they were kind of kooky, to tell you the truth, but I did it out of respect. And after I did these months of this, what they told me to do, then they told me to take that same motion that I'm doing and pass my hand past someone else, which I did at that time. My husband was sitting on the couch, or laying on the couch, and I felt something push my hand back. And then I went down, and then again, at his knee, something pushed my hand back. And I did it over and over and over. And I was like, I could touch that table. And it kind of freaked me out because I had no knowledge base. There was nothing to relate to. It kind of scared me, to tell you the truth. And I thought, am I going to tell people that I'm feeling this thing that I don't even know what it is? But then I had my curiosity. I had to talk to her about it. I just had to go back to the woman who told me to do these exercises. That was driving me crazy, actually. And she smiled at me. She says, oh, no, honey. She was a healing touch practitioner. And she could feel, she was teaching energy and chi and all these things that people do about, healing Reiki.
Yep.
I had none. It actually scared me because I was traditionally trained. I was trained in medicine traditionally, and I had a little bit of religious background. You don't dabble in those things, and when I felt this thing, it scared me because I had no foundation for it. It wasn't until after I found out that people feel energy, and they've done it like in Eastern countries, and then I had then I could start building my knowledge base to make sense of my experience, which was an actual experience that I repeated over and over and over again. And tried to teach people how to do it. And I found that there were other people that were doing it. So I had no knowledge base at all. There was no meme, there was no knowledge, there was no books. It actually scared me. I'll be very honest with you. I was taught that's witchcraft.
Yeah.
It scared me. I was a little embarrassed, and I thought, oh my God, I'm trying to be an RN and become an officer in the Navy. People something cookie.
There's no.
So there was no knowledge base. I just experienced it, and I can still do it.
There is no question at all. So thank you so much for sharing. There's no question at all that there are things in this world that we're not aware of, and they can come to you and make themselves apparent to you if you investigate enough or you just encounter them. But note, all I'm saying is, even there, it's in your story. You're saying, I discovered there are other people who are doing these things, right? So other people can partake in it. There are truths about how these things work, even if people don't fully understand them. What I'm saying is that ultimately, all of it will follow the same kind of trajectory of knowledge. We will understand how these things actually work, what are the mechanisms by which it works, and what, when we do that, the space from which all of these incredible things emanate from, they would be happy we figured it out. They're waiting for us to figure it out. Right now, what we're doing is very clunky. Like and like I said, we just learned how to kind of drive that car. But now let's open the hood.
Wasn't trained. I couldn't do Shakespeare if I didn't know. I could not.
But that's not the again. It's not the same thing. It's really not the same thing. So no, figuring out that there's some kind of an ability and then being able to like do something with it, whatever allows you to do that, that knowledge is already inculcated in some form in the form that you are. If you would have to learn all of it from scratch and create all of that method from the beginning and all of that stuff, that would be a whole other story, right? If you discovered something that is already there, as like a dormant ability you have, that's beautiful, and I'm in full agreement that these things are real. But it is not the same as a lot of the claims that people make that simply don't track. Like there's things that you can discover that work, and there's things you can discover that you're delusional about, and we're making the distinction between those two. The thing you're describing is things that work. There's other things that people can find. The what?
There's no use, in other words.
No, they don't do anything. It's not. It's just not a real knowledge. That's not what knowledge is. It's like just a piece of information is not knowledge. It has to be able to do something. Like you, and ultimately what it is, it's the inability to realize that there has to be some application, not in terms of people always think of it in like in some negative terms. I don't know why, but like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does work, great, and we should investigate more of it. This is the reason that I shared that conversation with that I did with Andres Gomez. It's the latest interview I did on my Dango Thoughts channel, or you can go to 0 to 1 on Spotify with Danny Goller. Is because Andres' work is exactly around the same thing. He's trying to take all of these like very big esoteric ideas and see if we can find the science to actually talk about it in a way that we can express to each other and really do something with. And I think that's a really important kind of work. That's where the future of all this research is. Hold on. Okay, I think I have to jump off because it's super late. Nico, I'll give you a few last words and then I'll wrap up.
Yeah, no, I think one of the takeaways that I took from the Andres podcast was when he talked about, like everyone is so fixated on the phenomenology and the content, the semantic content of the phenomenology.
Mm-hmm.
But underneath all of it, there's this machinery, right? And he talked about the frameworks they use for that machinery, which is nonlinear optics, cellular automation, non-harmonic oscillator or harmonic oscillators, and liquid crystal frameworks, right? They've found that there are these mechanisms that underlie all of these experiences. And I think that is the really interesting part from all of this, right? Is like, what is happening? Why is there this interference? And so when I went to these spaces and I saw all these sacred geometries interfere to render what I was seeing,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I knew this feels computational, right? That was my like moment with the code, almost, quote unquote code. Like that is my like I think I see what's happening. But then all the semantic content, which is really cool, and I tried to make sense of, I kind of let go of, right? I let go of that and I said, okay, this is the key. And recently I heard you talk this way, which is really exciting, about kind of urging people to not be so fixated on what the code actually is, but more of what the underlying mechanisms of the code are. And so that's where I think that's where I think I think that's where you're steering this, but that's where I'm seeing you steer this kind of whole thing.
Yeah, and I agree with all of that, and it is a hard space to operate in because people just want to go. Like they don't want to linger on the things that are less to them. They're less interesting. I think people are very content driven. They meet a being, and that fascinates them. I meet a being, and
When
yeah.
said, don't give in to astonishment. I always thought that meant something else, but now I'm wondering if it means this. If it means like don't go with what is at the surface.
Yeah, it seems like you should still gather information. Like when I see beings, it's not about what that being told me. It's what I'm discerning as a whole in addition to what the being is saying. I'm not just listening to one being, I'm listening to many, many, many different beings, and I'm also observing what's true about these environments. Who told you that everybody are telling you the truth? It's like you kind of have to gather information from everybody and then decide what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And ultimately, it will have to be cashed out in some way that we can do something with. Like otherwise, it's just a lot of noise. And but I get it. Like it's kind of like I never understood why people are into politics, unless it's like like now it's almost like you can't escape it. But like I was like, who cares? Like it's just like can't we focus on building beautiful things? I don't know. It's just like it seems so silly, but people really care about this stuff, and I get it. Like we're all different. I can't. Just can't. I can't. Most people love soap operas. They love drama. They love who said who what to whom. And I'm like, I couldn't care less. But it's just like it's like it's just a matter of a type also maybe, which is okay. But I think that ultimately if we want to make progress, it can't be just by like these anecdotal things. Like it has to be more than that. Like people's impression about like I'm willing to go the few feet to the side and say yes. It's true that sometimes you can have experiences that seem to be conclusive, which I think is what Piggy and also Don were alluding to, which is that sometimes you can have these experiences even if you've never had them before, and the experience itself carries some kind of a signature that tells you it is the truth. It's like it is that. Like that is true, and yet still, even that can be wrong. And that people should always allow that to be the case. And I feel like sometimes people don't allow that to be the case. It doesn't mean it is wrong, but it can be. And that little can be always has to accompany people. Yeah. Okay. I definitely have to adjourn because it's like super late, but this was a lot of fun. Nico, thank you so much. Piggy, brother, thank you. Sean, who else? Don, thank you so much for joining and sharing the space. Thank you so much, our incredible moderator, Guru, and Ebony, who came to endow us with her wonderful presence. We missed you. Ebony is basically, we kind of consider her to be the mother of the core community on Discord. Come join our Discord by finding the link on YouTube and on TikTok. If you want to follow me across platforms, it's Danny Goller on Instagram and TikTok. It's Goller Danny on X, LaserX83 on Twitch. What is that? I didn't even do that. It was like, okay, we gotta amp it up. And Dango Thoughts on YouTube, DANGO Thoughts on YouTube, and come join my new show on Spotify, 0 to 1 with Danny Goller, from Earthbound Minds to Cosmic Citizens, the show that revolves around the future of humanity. On Dango Thoughts on YouTube, you can also join the membership program where you gain early access to all my content, access to my weekly lives for members only that are happening on Sundays. Come join that. Those are a lot of fun. We go much deeper into all kinds of topics. And if you sign up for the second tier upwards, please make sure you email me to the email listed there, which is lasersimulationx@gmail.com. You don't need to remember. It's listed there. And I'll send you a link to invite for our monthly Zoom calls. What else? If you still want to donate to the film, The Discovery, you can find the trailer for the movie right here in the description of this live. And then in the description of that trailer, The Discovery, there's the GoFundMe page. If you want to donate to the post-production, received with gratitude. If you donate over $1,000, you will automatically be placed on a list of people who would watch the movie as a world premiere all together. It's going to be incredible with Q&A and everything. And if you want to check out our website, codeofreality.com, which is the website where you can find all the information about the protocols, the lasers, and all that stuff. And you can also, let me put it on the screen. You can also, if you actually want to share your experiments or see other people's experiments, go to veilbreak.ai, and you can share that information of your experiment and see other people's experiments. And what else? Oh, if you want to grab some merch on the YouTube channel, that would be great because it helps the channel tremendously. Mugs, shirts, hoodies. We have the core design, Code of Reality, and also the human first design, which denotes the attitude we should all treat each other as humans first before any political affiliation or conviction we might have about the world. I appreciate you all. Thank you so much. Thank you, our moderators. Guru, appreciate you, brother. Ebony, thank you so much for stopping by. And thank you so much for all the guests that joined. And thank you so much, you, the audience, for sticking around, for showing support, for asking questions, for debating, for disagreeing. This is a lot of fun. Come join our communities on Discord. We have a lot more of this out there. I think I said everything that needed to be said. Appreciate you guys. Have a good night. Peace and love. See you tomorrow. Ciao.